guys, welcome back. It's Josh with the Financial Advisor Car Guy. This week I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about renting cars and car rentals in general. The last 10 days I've been on vacation and just got back last night. There was one day off in between. We had 2 trips scheduled. One was out of state and then one was just out to the coast for the 4th. But I had to rent cars, and I feel like every time I rent a car, something like this ends up happening. So it's been on my mind. I thought, let's go ahead and talk about it. We'll talk about the cars that I had rented as well and what that looks like, but I'll just kind of dive right in. So our first trip, like I said, 10 days ago, was down to the San Francisco Bay Area. I was going to watch a couple Giants games, and fortunately they won both games, and that was awesome. That part of the trip was fantastic. But when we flew down there, I had pre-booked a rental car, and I used a company named Sixt, S-I-X-T, I believe. Anyway, I booked a car through them. It was a mid-size or a compact SUV, I guess is what it was. It was supposed to be like a Toyota RAV4, that size, or something similar. So I book it, I rent it. We're gonna have it for 5 days. Basically, we're gonna pick it up on a Thursday night when we land, and then I'm gonna return it Tuesday morning before we fly home. We land in San Francisco at, I wanna say 7:15, something like that. By the time we got on the tram and made our way over to the rental car department, they were the only rental car company closed. They had closed at 7 p.m. So you can imagine my frustration. I'm super annoyed. I talked to the guy at the budget desk next door. He says, there might be somebody down in the garage, where the cars are. Go down there, see if you can find somebody. So I did. They had a self-service kiosk with an 800 number. So I called the 800 number, nothing. I gave them my confirmation number, my invoice number, the whole 9 yards. And basically the best they could do for me was modify my rental, but I wouldn't get a refund. None of that would change. So lesson for you guys, make sure that the rental company is open when your plan lands, right? It created a problem and caused an unnecessary Uber ride. So to make a long story short, we Ubered into San Francisco to our hotel. And the next morning I called the company and I basically said, this is what happened. I don't need the car for a couple days now. I mean, we've already Ubered where we're gonna go. Can we modify the rental? So, like I said, they weren't gonna give me any money back. They weren't gonna reduce the cost or any of that stuff. So it is what it is. They modified the days. Come Sunday morning, we were gonna move from San Francisco up to the Napa Valley. My wife and I were planning to do some wine tasting and just have a good time up there. So I needed the rental car. So I Ubered again back to the airport, to the rental car desk, and I go in there and I talk to the guy. I mean, it was a super long wait. All the rental companies were so busy. And I kept hearing whisperings of, like certain rental car companies running out of vehicles. It kind of concerned me a little bit, but I stood in line and finally got to the desk, told the guy my story and how frustrated I was and how they were the only people closed and all that stuff. And he just sort of shrugged his shoulders and didn't really care. But he was able to upgrade my car and tried to make it right because I had to pay out of pocket for an Uber and all that extra stuff. So instead of the RAV4, they ended up giving me a 5 Series sedan, BMW. Now we'll talk about that here in just a moment, but conceptually, the rental car company always wants you to do their insurance. They want you to pay for all the extras, the bells and whistles. They're gonna try to upsell you anyway. But because I had already booked online and prepaid everything, I just told the guy no. Yeah, I'm not gonna pay anything more. I want you to, finagle whatever you can inside of what I'm already paying you, and we'll call it good. So he was able to upgrade me to their premium sedan line car, which, I'd guess that car is normally gonna be $300 to $400 a day. He was also able to throw in the bridge fare bundle, because we were in the Bay Area, we're driving back and forth over bridges, they'll cover the tolls. He also was able to work in free gas. So they gave it to me with a full tank of gas, and I could return it literally with the gas light on. I didn't have to put any gas in it. And gas in the Bay Area is between $4.25 and $5 a gallon. I did see it $4.99, and of course this car takes premium. So I mean, we're looking at $5 a gallon times a 15 or 18 or 20 gallon tank. There's another $100. So the free gas was huge. I mean, that's about it. The car had all the bells and whistles. In the RAV4, I would have had to pay extra for navigation if I wanted it. I wouldn't have done it, but this car had nav. Yeah, it was just a really, really nice car. So if you remember from 3 or 4 episodes ago, I talked about my wife's car, and she's got a 535 Xi. This car is a 530. And first thing I did was on my way down from the desk to the rental garage, I pulled out my phone and started Googling the car. I wanted to know, what's the engine? What is it? As it turns out, it's a 250 horsepower, turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. So again, if you remember my wife's car a couple weeks ago, we talked about it's a twin turbo straight 6 with only 300 horsepower. So, all things being what they are, equal, if you will, I was a little bit surprised to see that the 4-cylinder didn't have that much less power than the straight 6. So I was pleasantly surprised. I got in, it's a brand new car. I mean, the car had less than 200 miles on it. I think it had 166 miles. It had just over 400 when I returned it, but it was a brand new car. I mean, it had the new car smell. It still had a sticker on the dashboard talking about the airbag instructions. It was a brand new car. It had Arizona license plates on it. So, I mean, it didn't even have enough miles to justify a drive from Arizona. So my guess is that's where it was registered. But the car may have never even left San Francisco, or, somewhere in California would be my guess. Anyway, I drive back to the hotel, pick up my wife and kids, and we head off to Napa. So my driving experience with this car is such that I was actually really, really impressed. It's a new car, so everything is tight, everything is quiet, everything is nice. Where I felt the disconnect between this car and my wife's car was from a stop. So if I'm sitting at a stoplight or a stop sign and it turns green, or it's my turn to go and I step on the gas, there was a little bit of hesitation. My wife's car isn't that way. I step on the gas and I move in a hurry. But where I did notice that this car could hang with my wife's was on the highway. If I was changing lanes or already rolling, giving it some gas, it did. It moved really, really nicely. It moved forward quickly without a whole bunch of work. There wasn't a lot of turbo lag. There wasn't any of that stuff. It just went. It was really, really responsive, and I liked that. It also had the dial on the center of the console where I could switch to, actually that's not true, it was just push button. But next to the dial where I could control the radio and all the in-dash entertainment stuff, it had a comfort mode, the sport mode, the eco mode, and I think there was a 4th mode as well. But I kept it in normal until I was on the highway, and then I'd put it in sport. And it was a noticeable difference. I could feel the car's suspension tighten up a little bit. I could feel the bumps in the road, or the ruts in the road, or the little pebbles in the road. I could feel all that stuff in the suspension. And, but I did feel the turns. If I'm driving down the highway and I'm going around a corner, at a high speed, the car hugged the road really, really nice. So that was awesome. I really, really enjoyed the car, and I definitely want to continue, to want a new car for my wife. I really think that a new 5 Series is the way we want to go. So after returning the car, we were back at the airport, got back on an airplane, and tried to fly home. I'm not going to get into that story, but a long story short, we were rerouted into a different airport where I was going to have to yet again rent a car. I was going to have to drive home, about a 4-hour drive, 3.5 to 4-hour drive, and was going to have to rent a car. So I was not going to use the same rental company as I did the time before, because the experience I had just wasn't great. I felt like they did end up making it right in the end by giving me a better car, but from a service standpoint, their lack of compassion, their lack of customer service, both in person and on the phone, forcing me to use an app. I just wasn't really happy with how it all went. And being in customer service myself, I feel like that's kind of make or break it for me as a consumer. So I ended up just going away from there. I did use budget rental car the next time around. And, same thing. They closed at 11 o'clock. We landed at 11:30. So we had to spend the night in a hotel. I did have to Uber to the hotel. I did have to Uber back to the airport. So again, more money out of pocket, which is so frustrating. But we got there. This time the customer service was fantastic. They were open the next morning. Very, very helpful, very, very friendly, very apologetic. They were, very fast. There was no line, so I walked right up to the counter. They were able to help me out immediately. They didn't try to upsell me. They basically said, do you want the extra coverage or not? I said, no. They said, fine, here's the key, here's the paperwork, sign on the dot. So I signed, I got the keys, I walked out to the lot, and it's a 2020 Jeep Compass, which probably would have been the competitor of the RAV4 that I was supposed to get the time before. So I went from a 2021 BMW 530i with 250 horsepower, turbocharged engine, to a 2020 Jeep Compass, which is fine. It got me home. It's a no frills SUV, if you even want to call it that. It's more of a crossover, not super comfortable, not super luxurious, not super powerful. You can hear the road noise, not fuel economical at all. It drank gas so fast. I mean, I was not even halfway home and I was below half a tank. And I mean, we're talking about a 220 mile drive or something like that. The second half of the trip was a little bit better. I did get better fuel economy, but a lot of that was because I was heading downhill. I had to go over a mountain pass the first leg of the trip, if you will. And so that was that. But the Jeep Compass from the outside looks pretty decent. It's not the best looking car or SUV. You get inside and it does have a fairly sizable touchscreen system, but no frills. It doesn't have navigation. It doesn't have any, outside of a radio, it really doesn't have any bells and whistles. It has Apple CarPlay. So you plug your Apple phone, your iPhone, into the USB slot, and then it kind of mirrors onto the screen. So we were still able to use GPS. We were able to use Pandora and all of our phone apps that we like to use when we're traveling through the car radio, through the car screen, and that was fine. This one did have, I thought one of the coolest features this car had was the terrain knob. There in the center console, it did have a dial that you'd go from, mud to sand to pavement to wet. I don't recall what the settings were, but you could modify the grip of the vehicle on different terrain, which, yeah, I think that's a pretty cool feature. Not a lot of things do that. It is a Jeep product. It felt very Chrysler-like. There were a lot of similarities between that Compass and my Challenger, just from an aesthetic. I mean, the dashboard felt the same. The steering wheel felt the same. What else? The buttons and the knobs on the dash are very similar. You could just tell it's a Chrysler product, and not that that's a bad thing. I mean, Mopar or no car, I guess is what they say, but it didn't feel the same as that BMW did just days prior, and it shouldn't have. I guess I'm not being very fair. I know what I like. And if I'm going to rent a car, I want it to be one of two things. I want it to either be fun and fast or comfortable. And I got to say, the Compass wasn't either one of those. The BMW was both. I would say it checked every box. And again, I'd run out and buy one way before a Compass. But let's circle back to that BMW for a moment. The 2021 BMW, MSRP, it starts at $55,000. I would not do that. I would not pay $55,000 for a car like that with a 4-cylinder engine. Yeah, it's turbocharged, but a 4-cylinder engined car for $55,000, and it's going to depreciate like a rock. They're mass produced, all those things. Nothing limited about them, nothing super special about them. It's a run-of-the-mill sedan. Yes, it's got every bell and whistle you can imagine, every creature comfort. It went as far as having cross-stitched upholstery on the seats. I mean, it was gorgeous. You open the door and the backrest has kind of a cross-stitched, embroidered, quilted looking seat. Aesthetically, it was beautiful. It was really, really nice, and it was quite comfortable. You kind of sink into those seats and it sort of molds to you, and it was power everything. Whereas we go back to the Compass and I get in and the first thing I have to do is adjust the mirrors in the seat, and the seat's not powered. The seat was, on a track. So I would slide forward and back, and it had this weird pump lever on the side of the seat where, I kind of click it. I go in an up and down motion, pumping it up and down, and it either raised or lowered the seat. And so, again, no frill. It just got me from A to B. And I paid $200 for the one, not even 1 day rental. I picked it up at like 10 a.m. and I returned it at 4 p.m., something like that. And it cost me $200 plus gas. I had to go fill it up on my way back. That BMW ended up costing me under $300 a day with gas and everything included. And it was a way better car. It was actually about $250 a day, I think, was really what it came out to be, because I didn't have to pay gas or any of that stuff. So for the money, the BMW hands down was a better car. It had plenty of room. My kids were familiar with it because it's what we already have at home. Granted, ours is 13 years older, but from a generic standpoint, the back seats are the same size, the doors open and close the same way. It was even the same color. So that was pretty cool. The technology package in the new cars it's come a long ways, right? It's all touchscreen. It's all satellite driven. It's all, it had a heads up display. When I was leaving the airport to go back to my hotel, downtown San Francisco, some of those streets are one ways and things like that. And I didn't want to go the wrong place. I knew where I needed to get, but I wanted to find the most direct route. So I used the GPS leaving the airport, and it's fascinating. It's got a digital gauge setup. So, I've got the huge nav screen in the center console. Then if I look between the steering wheel, between my hands, there's the tach and the speedo, and in the middle is another nav screen. And then I look up to the dashboard where I've got my digital speedometer. Next to that is another nav screen in the heads up display. So I've literally had 3 maps in my face the entire drive. They've made it so dummy proof. You can't get lost. You can't do any of those things. It's pretty straightforward. But again, you're paying that $55,000 for that car. Whereas I'll bet you could get a fully maxed out loaded Compass for in the mid-20s. I don't know. I didn't research it. I'm guessing maybe closer to 30 because new cars are costing more anyway. But for what it's worth, I'd say, yeah, 25 grand, 30 grand is going to get you a maxed out Compass. And at the end of the day, you still have a Compass. So, you might love them. Forgive me if you do. I didn't hate it. I think for me, it was just coming out of that BMW and the next day getting into this Compass, it was not the same. And my expectations were a bit higher. And it sort of let me down. So it did get me home safely. It did get me home fine. It's just nosier road conditions and things like that. You hear all that stuff in that car. It didn't ride as smooth or as nice. It didn't accelerate as fast. Didn't have all the bells and whistles. Didn't have sport mode. That bums me out because most of my drive home was on the highway. So no sport mode in the Compass. But that's about all I got for you guys today. As far as renting a car, it's not a super good way to spend money if you can avoid it. Like I said at the beginning, we canceled our first couple of days of the car rental from that Sixt company. We ended up just riding the bus. It was fine. The tram, I guess is what it is, in San Francisco. And it was fine. We paid, I think it was like $5 for my wife and I, and $2.50 for each of my kids for us to get from one end of the city to the other. Oh, that's all we needed. It was like $10, $15 maybe. Super economical, super easy. It runs right to the street corner that you need to get to, or right to the, wherever it is. We went to Pier 39. It dropped us off right in front pretty much. I mean, it's like Pier 34 or something like that is where it dropped us off. 35, I think. But yeah, it was really easy to get around town and stuff like that without the rental car. So, I guess moving forward, I probably wouldn't have rented the car for the whole week if I had known better. But, everything happens for a reason, I suppose. And so we worked it out and made it work for us. And here I am shooting a video about the rental cars. So I don't know. I'd stick with the traditional rental car company, use the big ones, Budget, Avis, Enterprise, National, whatever. Don't use these little fly-by-night companies. I was trying to save $1 and it backfired on me terribly. And again, they tried to make it right, but I wasn't that impressed. The car was great, but with them, I wasn't that impressed. So that's that. I hope you guys had a fantastic 4th last weekend. I know I did. I was at the coast, the Oregon beach. It was beautiful. The weather was great. We've been going through some really hot days here, so stay cool. And as always, may every investment you make be a good one. Till next time.